You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, all over social media, or our morning newsletter, KCSN Daily, dedicated to your Kansas City Chiefs. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to another special episode of Outside the Trenches. We are live on this Thursday afternoon, and I am BJ Kissel, founder and CEO of KC Sports Network and former Chiefs insider and reporter. And I'm joined, as always, by my guy, my podcast partner of the last, 4 years, 5 years, something like that, Mr. Nick Leckey, former K-State All-American and Super Bowl champion with the New Orleans Saints. Nick, how goes it today?
That's good. That's good. There's no complaints on mine. I just got back from a sales meeting in Vegas, so I'm good.
All right, we'll get to your Vegas experience here in a minute, because one guy I know that we've had a fun Vegas experience with is Tucker Franklin, our third co-host on this show, our full-time podcast producer and content manager at KC Sports Network. Tucker, how goes it today for you?
Good. It's one of those days where it looks like it's cold outside, but it's not. It's been a rainy day. I took my dog out for a walk and it was fine. And then all of a sudden it started pouring down rain on us. So it's been one of those kinds of days, and it's just been getting after it. That's what we've been doing.
All right, well, let's get after it. Talk a little Chiefs, Jags, and whatever else comes up on this episode. Let's start with some headlines before we get into our blind nil segments. And you talk about, the Chiefs, Mecole Hardman, his injury situation right now, not practicing, dealing with some stuff. Tucker, how worried should we be based on the things that have been said and what's out there about Mecole Hardman right now?
Yeah, really interesting. He's dealing with an abdominal issue. He popped up on the injury report, I believe at the beginning of the week, something that didn't come up after the game, because Andy Reid after the game said that there were no injuries to report. So something that came up after a couple practices, something that he's been dealing with. Looks like he's not going to practice again today. So now he's not going to have the Wednesday practice, the Thursday practice. So it's going to come down to the Friday practice to see if he does play against the Jaguars. It doesn't. They'll have plenty of options. The Chiefs will people to step up. Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, just to name a few of who can step up and play if he can't go. But again, he's not going to practice on Thursday. A tough break for Mecole after having a good start to his year.
And I think he's kind of finding his footing in the offense too. So it's kind of a bummer that he was kind of feeling his role within this Mahomes-led offense. That to have an injury now and with the trade, you're going to see, wow, Kadarius Toney, he looks hungry. He that one catch, it looked good. So it's I think they're going to find ways to add him into the system. Yeah,
it'll interesting how it plays out. I talked about it with Brett Coleman on KCSN Update yesterday. For anybody who hasn't checked that out, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it on our podcast platforms. But talking about the Jags and the amount of zone coverage that they play, and that really plays into. And I asked him, I was like, well, we've played teams before that played a lot of zone, and as soon as they face the Chiefs, they play a lot of man. And he goes, this is the one defense, talking about the Jags secondary, that really don't feel like they should try to play man against anybody, which told me all I needed to know about what kind of game we might be able to see from Juju Smith-Schuster, from Travis Kelce, and the usual suspects. But Juju specifically, just because of his size and what his skill set and his strength is, those intermediate routes across the middle. And as long as offensive line can give Mahomes time, this could be a big game for Juju in the passing offense, Tucker.
Very much so. And I think that when you look at this, I talked with Matt Hamilton a little bit about this too. Kind of on the flip side, we talked about the Chiefs kind of struggling to defend two running back sets. The fullback sets is kind of like the inverse of teams running man coverage against the Chiefs when they have zone tendencies. But no, I'm excited to see what Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster can do, especially if Mecole Hardman can't go. Like I mentioned, maybe do we see a little bit more Kadarius Toney? I know he's only been involved with this team for a week or two, but they got him involved right away. And I don't think that's not nothing when you look at what he was able to do and some of the routes he was able to run. People were very excited about the route that he ran, that he was able to make some guys miss. And if they do run that man coverage, Kadarius Toney is a guy that can make some guys, lose track of where he's at. So I'm going to be curious to see how they do fill that McCole Hardman role if he isn't able to go. Now, he could still practice, Friday, and he could still practice, go through the walkthrough and be fine. But missing the first 2 days of practice is not nothing. I think I tweeted something out about like my concern level is at like a 6.4. Like it's certainly something that is there, but I'm not too totally concerned because I think they've labeled it as abdominal soreness. So it's nothing that's like specifically hurt in the abdominal region.
But that could be like a sports hernia. So that could be really bad. That could be really bad. So if not taken care of properly, and something that could, it could possibly be
tummy ache.
Major. Yeah. Or that. Yeah.
It could be a lot of things. It's like when they say calf, a little different level, but like when they say calf injury, like it could be a strained calf or it could be a torn Achilles. Like they say the same thing with those when they refer to those. But jump around a couple more headlines before we get to our blind nil segment, which for people listening to this show probably know each bring a different segment to the show that the other two hosts do not know about. We chat about it for 10 minutes or so. But guys, a couple more headlines across the NFL. Before we get to the big one that's on the front page of ESPN, has to do with the Washington Commanders. Let's talk a little Josh Allen and his UCL and his elbow injury there. He's not practicing again, which is setting bells off across the entire AFC, and for good reason, because I do not know what the Buffalo Bills offense looks like if Josh Allen's not the one under center. That is a completely same thing with the Chiefs. In fairness, they say like Chad Henne, it's a completely different team. Not that they still don't have the top defense in the NFL and they have playmakers on the offensive side, but this is a big one and one that Chiefs fans are obviously going to be paying attention to as we get into the middle part of the season and, start talking about number one seeds and things like that. But Nick, how much should, Chiefs fans be paying attention to the Josh Allen deal right now?
I mean, you take it for what it's worth. And, he might, has he been ruled out yet? It was be game time
not
decision.
Yet.
Day to day.
They're not giving that information. Are you kidding?
So, I mean, practice like he's going to be there. And if he's not, then you're in luck. That's it.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. That's his throwing elbow, though. Like, that's a tough injury with that UCL, which I believe for like pitchers like the Tommy John is that UCL deal right there. So it's not a small thing and maybe not something that is going to go away.
And it's funny too how it's sort of like the headline. I don't want to jump anybody's thing, but it's like, look at Buffalo outside of Buffalo, man. You got a team like every team has their Achilles, and it seems like on this past Sunday, the Jets, they were getting after the quarterback. They were hemming him in, and it's like they might have laid a blueprint for teams to follow. And I know it's a tough one. You got to get after them, but still, man, risk it. Like you can do some line stunts and get a pressure that way. That's huge.
I think what's really interesting, I don't know if you guys saw the video of him injuring his elbow. It looked like it hurt. Shocker, an injury looked like it hurt. But if you go back to Josh Allen's injury history, he had a UCL sprain in 2018. So this isn't the first time that he's been dealing with a UCL injury of sort. I believe a lot of the people, I'm not a doctor, but a lot of the people who are doctors on Twitter who talk about sports injuries have said that this is a kind of an injury where you're just going to have to deal with pain. If it's not torn, if it's not anything like that needs surgery, it's just a pain management type of deal. So it's going to be very interesting to see the process of him kind of going through this and dealing with this sprain. And if there is anything, I know they're going for second and third opinions on this because obviously it's major. It's huge. That's his throwing arm on a UCL, which was, BJ, as you mentioned, that's the Tommy John injury. So he could have Tommy John surgery, and who knows how long that holds him out. It's a different throwing motion than it is baseball, but who knows how long that throws him out.
You don't see that with quarterbacks all that often. And honestly, saying that, I'm sure there's been someone at some point, but I can't remember a quarterback ever having Tommy John.
Carson Palmer did. Yeah.
Did he really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you know Carson Palmer, Tucker? You were like not even born yet.
I know this because Matt Kissel talked about it on the breakdown, and Carson Palmer was his roommate at USC. And he had a Tommy John surgery. That's the only reason I know that.
All right.
Yeah, that makes more oddly specific, Tucker. Your confidence in saying that was amazing. Because I'm like, you never lived in Cincy, and were you a USC fan when you were like 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. let's move on to the third one. And if we need more injury update on we'll bring on Aaron Borgman, talk about Josh Allen's injury. Our guy Aaron could fill us in on what all this means. But let's move on to the third one. And this one just broke like at 12:30, about an hour ago. Hit ESPN's website, and it was alluded to yesterday with the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. This has to do with the Washington Commanders. Reading the first couple paragraphs here of the article on ESPN, you can find it on the front page in bright red letters, breaking news. The Attorney General for the District of Columbia says his office is filing a civil consumer protection lawsuit against the Washington Commanders, owner Dan Snyder, the NFL, and Commissioner Roger Goodell. Attorney General Carl Racine has announced the civil complaint for colluding to deceive district residents at a news conference Thursday. Racine said the team and league violated DC consumers' rights based on what they knew about the organization's workplace misconduct, alleging Snyder lied about his knowledge of the situation. And so it's one thing when, people in the media and media people are going back and forth. It's a whole different deal when the Attorney General of the District of Columbia gets involved in the way that he is right now. This is something that's not going to go away anytime soon, Nick.
This feels bigger. This feels bigger than just simply trying to sell a football team. This is like, when's the last time a DA has gone after an owner? I mean, even Robert Kraft, when he was getting, massages, so to speak, really didn't get the book thrown at him. And I think Dan Snyder right now, he's out of that circle of trust with the owners. And, he's out of the circle of trust from Congress, so they're like, okay, well, you're going to try and sell this team, then we're going to GM you up as much as we can. And the guy's outed as kind of a pervert too, with those videos. So of the cheerleaders, yeah.
Yeah. The statement that came out last night, I'll just say this, Tucker, because it wasn't a surprise that something came out, and the Commanders tried to get in front of it and put a statement out by an unnamed spokesperson last night. And that statement read, "The Commanders have fully cooperated with the AG's investigation for nearly a year. As recently as Monday, a lawyer for the team met with the AG, who did not suggest at that time that he intended to take any action, and in fact revealed fundamental misunderstandings of the underlying facts." To me, they didn't tell us they didn't give us a heads up that they were going to do this thing. And we're very unhappy about it now, is how that reads to me.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
It's just a baffling situation. It just seems like every day we learn something more about this organization that makes it just awful. Like, just the way it's been run, just the way it's been handled, just everything about this Commanders organization has been really just poorly. And this isn't the only lawsuit that they have going on right now. You got Mary Jo White's review on them going on as well. So it's like there's several investigations going on, not only into the Commanders organization, but into Dan Snyder, into his finances, into what they've been doing. Now the Attorney General's not only suing the team, but the league and the commissioner. This is not good. It's not good for the Commanders, not good for the league. And it's not a great look that it seems like that the Attorney General's got some pretty decent ground to stand on.
Yeah, there was even stuff about how they were selling tickets and how they were allocating tickets for events there, and whether how much of it was going back to the NFL. And all of a sudden the NFL owner is going to feel like there was money being taken out of their pocket, and all of a sudden your friends leave, and this is what happens. It seems like, and obviously we don't have all the details, and we're finding out as everyone else is, but a mess of a situation, to say the least, and something that honestly all NFL owners are going to have to answer for. Roger Goodell is now brought into this at some level, being a part of this lawsuit, again, by the Attorney General of the District of Columbia. So something that, as Andrew Brandt always says, there will be lawyers, and there will be a lot of lawyers on this one. But we're about 14 minutes in. Let's get to some football stuff. Let's talk a little Chiefs, Jags, and just Chiefs in general. Tucker, let's get started with you, since you're the one who made the title of this episode and kind of gave us a little bit of a heads up on what might be coming in this first segment. But what do you got for us today, Tuck?
The race for the AFC number 1 seed heating up. We're at week 10 right now, so we're getting closer towards the playoffs. We're talking race to the top. Chiefs are tied with the Bills. Bills going through a little bit of an injury issue. So my question to you guys, who needs the number one seed more? You can talk about who wants it more. Who needs it more? Who needs that home field advantage more? Do the Chiefs need it more, or do the Bills need it more?
I think that both teams have great home field advantages. I think Buffalo's added advantage is the miserable cold and the rabid fan base, whereas Kansas City has a rabid fan base and just really cold. It's that Buffalo, the adness, the thing that adds Buffalo is the moisture, right? You get like the sleety, freezy stuff and the snow. It's a miserable place. Like I would look every year on my schedule when I was playing, and I say, okay, do we play Buffalo? We do. When we play, I'm like, oh, September. Okay, good. I'm fine. This is not like having to play in Buffalo in December, man. It's a miserable place. It just looks miserable on TV. But I would say Buffalo needs us more. I think going out and taking an L to the Jets in New York was not a good look. And I think, they thrive better at home, whereas I think Kansas City is built for anywhere, really. I mean, you could say about Buffalo, but I just think that just the way the Chiefs play, they're fairly consistent home and away.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to say that I think the Chiefs need it more. It has nothing to do with whether or not I think the Chiefs can go to Buffalo and win this game. I just look at it from the simple point of Buffalo came here and won. And I know there's an argument that they did it in the regular season and the Chiefs won in the playoffs, but the Chiefs won that game at home in the playoffs. And I feel like Buffalo is already going to have a ton of confidence because of what they've done so far this year, and that their defense, their offense, everything is rolling, and they came into Arrowhead and won. And if all of a sudden you can come to Arrowhead and win, and then you get the next one at home, you have that much more confidence. Whereas you go to Arrowhead, you have to deal with something that isn't in your favor. And I feel like from a confidence standpoint, the Chiefs need this game to be at Arrowhead, to get the crowd into it and not have everything be against them. Nick, to your point, if it gets into a snowy game, and again, I know Patrick Mahomes has been good in all weather. We have the clip of him against Denver where he's like, I'm a snow game guy now. I think as much as we talk about throwing the ball and all of that, it's also on the defensive backs, not being able to turn and run and all of that, slipping, being more reactionary than it is to the offense. I really do think we make too big a deal of what it does to hold back an offense compared to defensive players who are reacting to the offensive guys. And it's just as likely that they would slip, or, the elements would affect their ability. But for me, I think the Chiefs need it strictly from a confidence standpoint of Buffalo came in here and won. You go to Buffalo's place, they're going to be that much more confident, and they don't have to worry about any of the elements, the crowd noise, any of those things affecting them, even in a small way, when you're talking about a game that's going to have a very, very thin margin of error anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. The Chiefs, I don't believe in the Patrick Mahomes era, have played a road playoff game outside of the Super Bowl, obviously. Which is kind of crazy to think about. Patrick Mahomes has never played in a playoff game that's been outside of Arrowhead Stadium since the Super Bowls, obviously. But I think that's kind of one of the things when I think about the number one seed, I obviously think about that. I do think that maybe Buffalo does need it more because they might need that confidence of playing at home a little bit more. But they might need that confidence of being, okay, we're the top dogs. We have the home field advantage. And home field advantage does help. We've seen a lot of the statistics about making the playoffs with the bye. The bye week is specifically huge. With only one bye now in the playoffs, it's a lot more likely to make the Super Bowl if you do have that one less game. Just a game of attrition. We know that with the sport of football, and if you have one less game, it's a lot easier. But I do think that maybe for confidence wise for Buffalo to say, okay, we get to have them at our place. I think Buffalo needs it a little bit more. I think the last time the Chiefs played at Buffalo was that 2020 game when Clyde Edwards-Helaire's rookie year ran all over the Bills. That was kind of a weird game because it was like drizzly bad weather. So I'm interested to see kind of what happens. They got a new stadium renders going out. It's I always like to see the stadium renders. I don't know what you guys think about those, but just like, especially like the Titans had a new tennis stadium render, the Bills got one. So that could be really exciting to see with what's going on with Buffalo. But I do think that Buffalo kind of does need it a little bit more as a team. And I think the Chiefs will be fine. I'm not saying that the Chiefs, if they don't get it, they wouldn't like it. But I just think as a team, Buffalo might benefit from it a little bit more than the Chiefs would per se, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think all those points make sense. And I think either way you look at it, I don't think the margin of error is, I don't think a team is going to be favored or not favored anymore, or you're going to feel really strongly about the Chiefs' inability to go there and win compared to Buffalo's ability to go and win a playoff game at Arrowhead. These are two very evenly matched teams. If health-wise, they're all staying the same. Who knows what this elbow is for Josh Allen? There's a lot of football that's still got to play between now and then. All right, let's move on maybe to the next segment, unless you've got any more thoughts, fellas.
No, I mean, like I said, this will tie into my blind nil, but I wasn't as impressed with Buffalo's beatdown of Kansas City as I was just in a similar stanchion, just because, they got a couple DPIs on a rookie corner, right? They kind of abused a corner and got some DPIs that were kind of like, yeah, I get it. You're just throwing it up there, kind of praying for a DPI, and you really can't run an offense like that. I don't think there was anything where I was like, well, damn, they're just having their way with this D line. Not really. And that leads me to my blind nil, because like I said, I wasn't as impressed for Sunday's win either for the Chiefs. Is what's your attitude after that Chiefs win, right? Is it changed because you saw this, or is it better, worse? Did it feel like a loss, feel like a W? Your backup quarterback, it's like
it's a good question, and I don't want to get into my blind nil because it could also kind of bleed into this as well. We don't want to mend them all together, but I expected it to kind of be an ugly game. I think you look at the history of what Mike Vrabel and what his teams have done against an Andy Reid offense. If anybody's had a lot of success against Andy Reid that you could point to as a head coach, Mike Vrabel's the guy. And that defense and that defensive line and Jeffrey Simmons, they are absolutely legit. They communicate well. They just kicked their ass up front, for lack of a better explanation. 100%. And so I'm not entirely surprised the game went down the way it did. That's one of the 4 best teams in the AFC. And so if you're looking for the margin of error between those teams, I think the defensively in the second half, Chiefs absolutely figured it out. I think offensively, there's some people that had, Trey Smith, probably one of the worst games that he's ever played. I don't expect Trey Smith to continue. He's a better player than he showed in that game. I don't expect him to play as poorly as he did in that game if these two teams meet again. And so for me, what worries me more than anything coming out of that game, honestly, and I talked about it a couple times, and it's not that I don't believe in him as a player, but Harrison Butker, we're getting into situation late in the season where, whether it's his ankle, whatever the reason is, we know he has the ability, know he's one of the best kickers. So something is off here. And as we get to where these games are going to matter a lot more, are you going to be surprised, fast forward, if it kind of continues the way that it has? We get into a playoff game and there's a high leverage kick in the third quarter to get us up by 2 scores from 42 yards. Are you as confident now as you were 2 years ago with him making that kick? And I can't say that I am. And the Tennessee game really did it for me. I know he kicked the game winner at the end. I know there was wind. I know he's got his ankle and all those reasons. Conditions aren't going to be any better late in the season, especially at Arrowhead and in Buffalo, where they're going to be kicking. And if its ankle thing is going to linger throughout the season, that might not be a whole lot better. So again, he's going to be the kicker. He's still one of the best in the league. And maybe we took it too much for granted that it was just automatic. But coming off the Titans game, the one thing that worries me more than anything outside of the issue I don't want to talk about because it's my blind nil segment is Harrison Butker for me. I think, it's a game that it's going to be like that anytime you play the Titans, I think.
So wait, is your blind nil regarding Harrison Butker?
No, Nick, it's going right into things that you talk about all the time. I'm surprised you didn't bring it up. We haven't even talked about it yet, but we'll get to it here in about six minutes or so.
Because how we look at Harrison Butker, right? He is coming off an injury, right? So like any player, he's going to be handicapped a little bit by his injury. But the telling thing for me is I almost like how you sort of duffed a couple extra point and a field goal, right? So that way you're like, because I'd hate for him to be on like some 20 for 20 streak going into playoffs. We're like, oh shoot, he hasn't missed a kick since week 2. It's one of those things where he missed some kicks on this day coming off his injury. So if anything, it's like, I'm glad he made the last one that mattered in overtime. So it's like, look at that. And then remember when the kicker's out there, the offense effed up, right? Like, let's not forget that, right?
I'll take Steph Curry going 20 for 20, just draining threes and feeling confident in him, as opposed to him missing a bunch and then all of a sudden feeling like, oh, well, now he's due. That's what you're basically saying is like, I'm going to miss a lot. So he's due by the time he gets to the play. He's good and mentally sharp. I take the guy who just drills all of his kicks.
No, I love the video of Steve Kerr on the sideline with Steph Kerr. And he's saying, he's like, look at your first half. You went like over. I love your confidence. You're still taking shots from deep even when you're over. And that's Harrison Butker. He's fine. He missed 2 in the game, whatever. But guess what? Overtime, you did it. You're cool with me.
He missed more than 2. We've missed 2 extra points, 3 extra points, something like it's a thing now. He made
kicking
like an average, an above average kicker right now. And what we had was one of the best kickers that would be considered the best kicker in football if the best kicker to ever play wasn't kicking right now for the Baltimore Ravens. He would be seen as that dude. He's just playing in the wrong era.
That's right. He's like Scottie Pippen, right?
Did you see Justin Tucker like crow hop and kick a 70-yarder? Granted, he was in the dome, but he's just like, all right, I'm gonna crow hop and just leg swing through this, and it's incredible.
You see him making fun of Russell Wilson, he takes a moxie.
Hilarious. That poor guy's getting so beat down. It's like, wow, I feel bad for him, man. But
Tucker, where are you at with Harrison Butker?
I think I'm somewhere in the middle of where you guys are. I don't think I'm necessarily he's due level, but I don't think I'm into the world level. So it's somewhere between you make some, you miss some, and it's just kind of the way it goes. I know he is dealing with some injury stuff. Do I think it could be a problem? Potentially, but I'm not ready to face that until it actually comes and rears its head at me and makes me think about it. So that's one of those things where Harrison Butker, am I worried about it? A little bit, but am I sounding the panic button? Am I smashing the panic button? No, I don't think so. I mean, BJ, as you mentioned, he's going to be the kicker. There's nothing that's going to Matt Wright was signed off of the practice squad. Not that Matt Wright was going to snap his job from him, but it's just one of those things where I think it's just something he's working through, and it's good that he's working through it now in the regular season than working through something in the playoffs, to Nick's point.
All right, I got to bring this up. A little bit of breaking news about one of the other teams in the AFC West. The Raiders have been making some headlines over the last 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Jonathan Abram got released yesterday. I believe I've seen both Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller both placed on injured reserve, and now starting linebacker Blake Martinez just retired from football.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing.
So weird.
That is weird.
What? Say that again.
He played 93 snaps last week.
Who was that? Who?
Blake Martinez, former Packers linebacker. Their speedy, rangy linebacker. Decides he'd rather not play football anymore than play for the Raiders. So the Chiefs don't play the Raiders again until the last game of the regular season, and they're quitting. They're quitting 3 months before that.
I wonder if it's dangerous. If he's stressed, if he's stressed, or if the organization is being run so poorly right now that you've got to quit. That there's a mutiny, and he's like, F this, I'm not going to be here for this. I've been around. It's like, I don't want to be here. It's like Gronk retiring so he get traded, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what it is, man. It sucks, man. I've been on them crappy teams, dude. It sucks. And if you coaches all know they're about to get canned or whatever, then it's like, it's actually kind of fun. It was kind of freeing because you're like, the guys who play know that they got to play for next year. And even though you're not playing for playoff spots, you're playing for your spot next year on some other team.
Looking at the injuries that for Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow is an oblique injury, Darren Waller is a hamstring injury. Both of those have been nagging them the whole year. So I think their idea behind placing them on the IR with soft tissue, you have to rest and for it to get better. Minimum of 4 weeks, so they won't be back until week 14 at the earliest for those guys. But yeah. Raiders have had a rough go, and this whole week has been a very weird week for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, well, the whole AFC West has been weird from what I expected. Everyone but the Chiefs, it's just been like absolute what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the final segment here of Blind Noah. It's mine and Nick. I'm surprised you didn't talk about this yet, but the Chiefs' inability to run the football against the Tennessee Titans. And the reason I'm bringing this up is it's not about whether or not they're going to be able to run against the Texans, the Jags, the Broncos, and some of these teams are going to play in the regular season. It's can they convert a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1 short yardage play against a team like the Tennessee Titans or the Buffalo Bills, teams that are going to play, teams that you make excuses or we make excuses for? Well, they played a really good front. You got to give those other guys credit too. At some point, you got to make a play in the running game against a good front as you get into the playoffs. And it can't always just be really creative play calling. We've talked about this before. It's not the first time we've had this conversation. Even for Andy Reid, running the ball more, to be more successful, Eric Bieniemy said, you can't be successful. You got to keep hammering it. You got to keep getting after it. We got to run the ball more. I don't know if that's a shot on play calling or if it's checking out of them or whatever the reason behind that comment. Is the Chiefs' current inability, or let's word this so I'm not leading you into it. Do you feel the Chiefs' running game, the way it is right now, will hold them back in a way that is going to keep them from getting to where they want to be? Nick, I'll start with you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I've said it every week. I mean, the times that they win versus good teams is when they're feeding a running back, 10 to 15 times. When Mahomes, when your quarterback is not just your leading rusher, but got the most rushing attempts, that's not a good game plan. That is a less than ideal game plan. You might win a divisional round, but you're not going to win the AFC Championship, and you're not going to win a Super Bowl. Relying on that. And it's almost weird that I've stopped harping on it just because it seems like Andy Reid doesn't give a shit about running the ball, like at all. Like they just forget about it. And the times when I've seen the Chiefs offense hum the best is when they get those rushing yards, when they get that ground game going, because you have to. And what you're doing is you're saying, hey, defense, don't rush so hard, because guess what, buddy? We could be running this ball right at you. And so you might be chasing a sack of just Mahomes, and he's already handed off the ball 3 seconds ago.
Tucker, how do you feel? A couple of former offensive linemen.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to keep them from going where they need to go, but I don't think that the rushing model that they have now is sustainable, if that makes sense. Much like the Bills' rushing attack is Josh Allen, that's kind of morphed into what the Chiefs' rushing attack has turned into, is just Patrick Mahomes scrambling, which isn't great. I don't think is sustainable, but it's gotten the job done for the most part. So it's like, I don't know if you can say it for certain that it'll keep them from where they're going. I don't think what they're doing is obviously sustainable for the long term, but I don't think it's going to keep. I do think they need to run the ball better. Obviously, they need to run the ball probably a little bit more to keep defenses a little bit more honest on what they're going to do. So defensive ends can't just pin their ears back, but as Matt Castle and Matt Hamilton pointed out, defensive ends were pointing their ears back and going after the Patrick Mahomes, and he just stepped up and ran for a touchdown or ran for 15, 20 yards. So it's like one of those things. It's like, can they still run the ball effectively with Patrick Mahomes scrambling? Like, kind of, but like, is that a good thing? Not really. It's just
what I don't like is if it's 3rd and 1 on the goal line and we're on, like, it doesn't matter what hash they're on. I feel like the play is going to come down to Patrick Mahomes scrambling right, and he's going to throw the ball in that little window right before he steps out of bounds to hopefully somebody coming open or somebody gets lost in the traffic of the end zone. We've seen it multiple times already. And so sometimes I get you can't have everything that you want all the time, but I don't of all of the plays in the entire game against the Titans, the time at which I held my breath like, oh my God, did we just do that, was the 3rd and 1 where Clyde Edwards-Helaire started in the slot, ran back on the 4th down. And they gave him that inside handoff they always give to the fullback. And I was like gasping, like, what the hell was that? It worked. But you'd like to have a little bit more confidence, especially for an offensive line that, going back to training camp, we talked about being one of the top in the AFC. And we talked about being a strength of this offense and of this team. And right now, not a ton of confidence that 3rd and 1, you can just line up, run right down somebody's throat and pick up a first down against a good team. I don't care if they can do it against Houston. It doesn't matter. You need to be able to do it against a good team, because that's who the Chiefs are comparing themselves to. That's what they're setting up for, is having to beat the Titans in a divisional round, or having to beat the Buffalo Bills in an AFC championship and those good fronts.
Yeah, and it's like, to me, if they run that fullback dive short yardage one more time, I'm going to break my TV. It's just so absurd. I'm like, for all the creativity in the red zone, and everything that they do, and they have one play for short yardage for your 4th and inches, 3rd and inches. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. In fairness, that's the first time I've seen that play not work.
No, they gave it to Burton. It's been consistently not working.
Oh, I don't think the numbers are on your side. Like they run that play all the time because Tucker, you've heard me say it about 100 times. They have the counter pitch off of it where they're going to fake that and they're going to pitch it to Pacheco running the outside. Because I'll never forget they did it against Buffalo in 2014, and Jamal Charles was the one who took it like 25 yards and ended up winning that close game. It was that exact same play, and they ran the counter off it. It's the only time I can remember them running that actual counter pitch off that play, but generally, I feel like it works more often than doesn't gain a lot of yards, but it's kind of the go-to offensively. And maybe Buffalo had watched some film because they did stop it the first time, and then they came back to it with Clyde, and he got it. But it was one of those holy cow, did we just run that play moments for me.
When we were going through the breakdown plays and that overtime catch from Noah Gray, I don't know if you noticed this, BJ, but the play action was that fullback dive play.
Okay.
So they faked the handoff on the fullback dive, and then they had Pat boot out into the kind of flood levels concept out to that side.
Only 3 guys on that route. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was not a route that was had a lot of progressions to it. Patrick Mahomes made a play on it, but that was the shell of it. Was offensive line, everybody block left, fake handoff to Michael Burton into where he would go for that fullback dive play, and then a boot out for Patrick Mahomes. So very interesting. I know that was the first thing I noticed on that play.
Yeah. I think I saw K-State get stuffed on the quarterback, the bush push. So is that one of those things that you can do that in NFL, right? You can push the pile. So, I mean, yeah, that thing's undefeated.
Unless you're
right?
Jason Kelsey. As he explained, I was just holding him up. I was trying not to fall down. Shout out to that podcast being the best podcast out there right now. New Heights is amazing.
100%. That is a good one. But yeah, no, like I said, from that win over Tennessee it felt like a loss because it felt like their quarterback. I think if Tannehill's in that game, I think Tennessee's going to run all over the Chiefs. I think it's when Malik Willis kind of like the sacks weren't immediate in the end. So it's like Malik was just looking like cover sacks and then kind of panicked and could have thrown it away, but didn't. So you got a lot of garbage stats at the end. And then, KC beat a team that they should have lost it.
I think the only reason that the game the Chiefs defense absolutely shut them down in the second half. And to your point, Tannehill would have been better in the second half, throwing the football when needed. But in the first half, most of their offense, obviously, it was Derrick Henry, but it was also Malik Willis keeping the ball and doing things that Ryan Tannehill wasn't going to do either. So I guess he's a good athlete, but I don't think you get that threat from him. And that's one of those, you don't really know what you're going to face because I don't know if the Chiefs expected Malik Willis to be the one out on the field, and there wasn't a lot of tape on what he was going to do. We got a stat here, and from the comments, Tucker, bring it up. Burton fullback dive is like 14 of 16 they've converted.
Wow.
That play works.
Stat? How do you get that stat? You chart and film then?
Yeah. I don't know. He said it's like 14 of 16, so I think he might be guessing a little bit as well. But it does feel like that play. It does feel like that play always works. It just gets like a half a yard more than it absolutely needs to.
This guy Ready Whip, so he says, I want them to run up from under center, not these shotgun handoffs. So remember, the running back's position doesn't change in a shotgun or underneath the center. So it actually helps clear up the vision for him. So remember that. The running back's position does not change in shotgun versus under center. It just gives them better feel without the quarterback in the way to read a defense.
If we're going back, one question I want to ask Matt Castle, Tucker, is that play. I absolutely despise the sprint draw. They used to run it with Jamal all the time, or Castle would be in shotgun. They'd snap it to him, and then he'd run it over to Jamal.
Yeah.
He'd run 2 yards over. I was like, we don't have the offensive line to do this. This is not going to work. And it rarely worked. I know that because I used to chart those plays. That one drove me crazy.
Yeah, it's like I said, you should obviously they should smash Jacksonville. But at the same time, this could be Jacksonville's next fluky win.
Yeah, let's talk about that now. Let's finish this up and talk about predictions for Sunday. Tucker, what do you got?
That Jacksonville front is sneaky. Like, I think it's a sneaky good front. They don't have a ton of names that you would recognize. Arden Key, very good. Josh Allen, obviously, very good. They've got a couple rookies, Trevon Walker being one of them, who is very good. And they run a 3-4 as well, so a little bit of a different front than the Chiefs are used to seeing. So I'm really curious to see how the offensive line handles them, not only in the pass protection game, but in running as well. That could be really interesting to see the matchups on that, because this matchups have been not favorable for the Chiefs when it comes to their offensive line, to who they're going up against. But maybe this is a week that they can get back on the right track and get things right on the front. I'm excited to see that. I think it is a sneaky front that the Chiefs could run up against, but confident that the Chiefs can get it done. It's the secondary that I got the confidence in the most, and I think that the Chiefs wide receivers can make the secondary pay, and Travis Kelce as well. These guys run a lot of zone, as we've talked about on KCSN Update. Brett Coleman talked about it on Wednesday. Matt Hamilton talked about it today. With me, when they're running a lot of zones, so that's going to be Juju. That's going to be Travis Kelce. Maybe MVS gets a little bit more involved. I know people were disappointed they didn't get to see him very much, but could be a big offensive day on the throwing the side of the ball. So I'm curious to see towards the end of the game if they do get to run the ball a little bit more.
Did Doug Peterson? Did he cross with Patrick? Right? Were they together?
No.
So they never crossed, right? Okay, but you got to look at this game. So early, sure, they could win, right? They're probably going to win, most likely. But noon is a trap game, you guys. Bettors, noon trap games for Chiefs, right? Especially coming off, like a tough Sunday night game. So I'd be curious if Doug Peterson could throw any wrenches for teams to sort of emulate going forward. It's kind of knowing that offense, knowing how to hamstring that offense, and they might be trying to throw everything they can against this offense to see what they can stop, and might show something on film. So I'll be curious. If it's one of those days where if Kelce gets shut down or not, and then teams are like, oh, that's how you do it. But then someone's going to blow up. If you shut down Kelce, then Juju's going to get a lot of stuff then.
Yeah.
There's a few coaches that were with the Chiefs that I was around that I liked more than Doug Peterson. He was awesome to me. He was very helpful to me. But Doug Peterson, he could be a genius out there. He still can't go execute those plays out on the field against Travis Kelce.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Right. You talk to analysts all week, and Tucker, you talk to Matt Hamilton. Like, there's one weakness of the Jags team. It's the secondary. And I don't know how a team that doesn't have the dudes in the back end of that that have a good front, but is not a dominating, like they're just going to tear apart the Chiefs offensive line type front. Andy Reid won't have an answer for it type of deal. I feel like this is going to be a game that we're going to see a lot of Juju. Said it off top of the show. I think Juju is going to have a big game. Kelce is always going to have a big game, whether it's man or zone. Knowing you're going to face a lot of zone defense, I feel like this is one of those games that it's going to be nice for the Chiefs offense to not see as much man as they have and get back to a lot of things they practice and haven't had to do a whole lot this year. And a lot of the reason that Juju came over, expecting a big game from him. And in the post game, we can sit there and talk about the contract extension that should be coming his way.
Absolutely. And I think there's a poll out on KC Sports Network right now. If you make sure to go to KC Sports Network's Twitter at KC Sports Network, go check it out, about would you want the Chiefs to sign, or how would you feel about a multi-year extension for Juju Smith-Schuster. Go check that out. Make sure to let us know how you feel. The poll right now, I'm loading it up on the second screen here. I anticipate it should be slanted very well to excited, to the stoked ends of things. People should be stoked if Juju Smith-Schuster, if it's announced tomorrow. People should be stoked. Yeah, 94.6% of our 864 votes so far have said that they would be stoked if the Chiefs re-signed Juju to a multi-year deal.
Yeah, and he's a guy's a hard worker, and he's going to work, whether he's paid or not, So that's what you love about paying a guy like that.
Yeah.
So outside of the Chiefs rooting for obviously Chiefs fans rooting for win over the Jags, and be rooting for the Vikings this week as they take on the injured Buffalo Bills, or if Josh Allen plays in this game or not. hopefully Kirk Cousins can get a few more chains on his neck around after this.
It's a noon game. Kirk Cousins is a solid at noon games. So Kirk Cousins noon game. He's basically Patrick Mahomes when it comes to that. And officially, just seeing this come across my Twitter right now, Josh Allen did not officially practice today. So it was reported he wasn't going to. Now it is official he did not practice.
He didn't practice at all.
At all.
So it's one thing if it's limited and he just doesn't throw. If he's not out there at all, they're giving those reps to, is it Matt Barkley?
Case Keenum.
Case Keenum.
Former Vikings quarterback, by the way.
Oh, God. Does that count? I mean.
Oh, no. Revenge game. Is it a revenge game for Case Keenum?
All right, so Nick, what's your score prediction for Sunday? Let's wrap this one up.
I can't believe the Vikings are 7-1. They're 8-1. What are they? I'm waiting for them to implode. I really am. I'm just waiting for that late season. Everything just turns to crap. By the way, so I don't think they went over 10. Anyway,
Giants, the Jets, the Dolphins. It's been a weird year.
Yeah, changing of the guard, right? Changing of the guard. So yeah, I honestly think that the Chiefs will win. And I think I'm hoping that this is when I get the false hope. Like the Chiefs are going to feed Pacheco. They're going to just feed Pacheco all day, and they're going to be like, "Wow, this works," and they're going to kick their ass. I think they're going to kick their ass, but then there's going to be something where they see where Mahomes struggles a bit, and then they turn to the running game, like, "Oh wow, this helps us out when we run the ball." So I'm thinking 32. I'm thinking 42. 42. I'm thinking 42 to no, they're friends. 35 to 17. But that 7, it'll be 10, and that last second, it'll be a last second touchdown that why are you running the ball? Let's just stop.
Tucker,
over under for this game set of 51. Spread at 9.5 still. The spread has had some movement. I think it opened early at 12, I want to say, and then has gone down, which I think has been kind of interesting. If I can pull this up here from DraftKings. DraftKings has actually had the spread at 9.5 the whole time. Fun fact. So I don't know what I was looking at. I think that the Chiefs do cover. I think it's a 2-possession game, and I think it's one of those games that's going to be in control of the Chiefs, but might look a little closer towards the end, right? And a lot of those going in the 2021 season where the Chiefs would play really good for 2 quarters, for the first half, and they'd be up. The Buccaneers game is the one that sticks out to me, where they played so well in the first half, and then at the end of the game it was fake close. Tampa Bay really didn't have an opportunity to win that game, but it could be one of those games where the Chiefs play really well for the first half and then I kind of let off the gas a little bit. So I'm going to say over under 51. Interesting. Another fact about Arrowhead Stadium, 1-3 over under record. So the unders have hit most of the time when it comes to Arrowhead this season. It is a noon game. The Chiefs, you might know their other noon game that they had this season, they lost. It was the Indianapolis Colts. Also after a Sunday night game. Interesting fact as well. So I'm going to say it is 24-14.
But fake close.
Fake close. The 24 in the whole way.
And to Nick's point, we try to make these points about, okay, their secondary is struggle. They play a lot of zone that fits into the Chiefs. And so obviously Mahomes going to have a big game, and that's where they would come out and give the ball to the running backs and they'd run for, 180 yards because you expect them to do the opposite. But I just can't sit here and look at a defensive secondary that struggled like they have and not expect the Chiefs to put up at least 35, 38 points. So I'm going to think the Chiefs are going to win about 38-17. I do think Travis Etienne, they're going to give him the ball. They're going to try to slow it down. I think the first quarter might be a little slow, but as soon as the Chiefs get into a rhythm, if they do not get any pressure on Patrick Mahomes, he is going to light up this secondary. And so I'm not going to doubt Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. I know Nick's wishful thinking is that they're going to run the football. I don't see it happening in this one. If the Chiefs can stop Travis Etienne, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to give him a few. I think they're going to get some short fields. I think he's going to force it a little bit. Steve Spagnuolo's pressure, it doesn't fit well to a young quarterback the way that Steve Spagnuolo likes to send guys and put a lot of strain all those guys. So it's the last game without Frank Clark, as well as he's finishing up his 2-game suspension. So hopefully we see Frank back, and maybe we'll see a George Karlaftis sack this week. That'd be great. He's got to get back on pace here. He's got to average about 1.5. He's got to average about 1.5 for the rest of the year to flirt with that record that I said he was going to break, that I'll bring up every time and wear that one for myself. So
it's all right. I'm cheering for it.
Appreciate you.
Yes.
All right. We appreciate everybody for spending part of your day with us. We know there's a lot of great place to get your Chiefs content, whether you're watching on YouTube, and if that's where you are consuming our content, please hit that like and subscribe button and go look around. We've got a lot of the great content, posting 3-4 videos a day here on the network from a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different people. So check that out. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you check out all the other stuff that we've got at KCSN, whether it's KU, K-State, Mizzou, Royals. Got a lot of cool stuff and some new stuff come up here in about a week that we'll have some new news for you coming up, just maybe 2 weeks away. But appreciate everybody for spending part of your day with us. For myself, BJ Kissel, for Nick Leckey and Tucker Franklin, appreciate you all for listening. We'll catch you next time.